Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I'm your host, Joe Kuzma, and I want to remind all of our listeners before we begin today's episode that the Steel City Underground podcast is brought to you in part by our official partner, StubHub. If you're looking for tickets for any event, from sporting to concerts to theater and Broadway, everything in between, they're 100% guaranteed on StubHub. For more information, please visit steelcityunderground.com/tickets. So, folks, very excited today. I have, I guess we want to call him maybe a repeat guest, but he's never been on the show as far as the podcast before. I had the privilege of speaking with the rookie tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Scott Orndoff, before the draft, and Scott came back and said, isn't this something that, I'm actually with the Steelers now? Who would have thought? So, Scott, I appreciate you coming back. We asked you if you would come on the show before the draft if you were a Steeler, and now you're a Steeler. So how you doing and how you feeling?
I'm doing pretty good, man. We just finished up our off-season program, so now I'm just trying to stay healthy, trying to stay in shape and get ready for training camp next month.
Yeah, it seems like everyone has a little bit of downtime now before the grind really begins. So I'm going to revisit a few things that was discussed in the article, and I had the privilege to speak to you. I actually had the privilege, I think, to speak to you first before any of the other potential visitors with the Steelers that they met with pre-draft. And one of the things you said to me when you returned my message was, who would have thought that when we spoke last that I was actually going to end up with the Steelers? Does that come as a little bit of a surprise to yourself, or did you maybe have a good indication this is where you may end up?
At the time, going into the day, I didn't expect to end up in Pittsburgh. It didn't really come. My inkling didn't really come till later during day 3 of the draft. And that I thought, that's probably where I'd end up. But yeah, definitely, going into it definitely at first was a surprise.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good way of putting it, if it's a surprise or I would even ask, what were your thoughts like? I know there's some guys that kind of know they're coming out of maybe, I'm not going to say the University of Pittsburgh's by any means a small college, definitely Division I ACC program, but you kind of know that maybe somebody like your teammate there, James Conner, might be a certain round draft pick. Was there any indication or any feeling that you got from those surrounding you, agents and whatnot, that you may be a day 2, a day 3 guy, go undrafted? Tell me a little bit about that experience.
I think going into it from the very beginning, I thought, if anything was drafted, it ended up being a day 3 pick, like later round pick. But I think as the day kind of wore on, as every pick started to go, I kind of got the inkling that I would be I would go undrafted, which I kind of went into the day just expecting, like they say, expect the worst but pray for the best. So I already kind of was mentally and emotionally ready to just go undrafted, just for my own sake. And that's what ended up happening, which I was totally fine with. I was ready for it, but we always kind of thought if anything would happen, it'd be late rounds. But I'm perfectly comfortable with how I ended up.
Yeah, it could be a blessing and a curse because when you go undrafted now, you're not necessarily handcuffed to one of the 32 teams. You're kind of a free agent. And you kind of have your choice, depending on, of course, the offers that came your way. And I'm assuming the Steelers were one of the maybe more enticing offers to you versus anything else that you may have been given out there. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, from when I was talking to my agent, just kind of with the way the day kind of panned out, all the teams that were offering free agency in the end, I still think that just looking at their roster situation in general is kind of, I figured that'd be a good fit for me. Just looking at the kind of the big picture and obviously it helps to stay home, but I definitely, from my meeting with them pre-draft, I was comfortable, with the coaches. I met with Tomlin and Coach Haley and Mr. Colbert. I was definitely comfortable with them. I felt like coming in, I have a good opportunity to, at least get maybe a practice squad spot and hopefully, 53-man roster. And I definitely think, I'm really happy at this point with the decision I made for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity for you, especially at that time you weren't privy to the information maybe that the team was going to part ways with Ladarius Green. So I don't mean any, ill will towards anyone losing their job, but it does certainly maybe open the opportunity more for some of the rookies to make the 53-man roster and or practice squad when you have a veteran, especially somebody who was penciled in as maybe a starter the previous season, a big free agent acquisition, kind of sliding out the way there. But I do like how you said, we spoke about this before, and we'll go back to a little bit of your background too. Growing up, you grew up in Western Pennsylvania, so you're kind of staying close to home. Every kid kind of pretends to play for their favorite team when they're growing up, having backyard football games. I guess is a question, maybe it's rhetorical, but did you grow up as a Steelers fan?
Yeah, well, my family, we were always big time Steeler fans. When you live in Western Pennsylvania, it's kind of hard not to be. But I always, I grew up watching them. I probably never missed watching a game for the first 20 years of my life. That's on Sundays, that's always what we do, and it was always my favorite team growing up.
Yeah, it's got to be pretty surreal then to actually put on a black and gold jersey because, some guys, they might grow up idolizing, let's say, the 49ers, for example, who were a powerhouse there through the 80s or something of that nature, Dallas Cowboys, and here you actually get to go to the team you grew up following, which I think is pretty awesome. But the last time we talked, too, in growing up here in Western Pennsylvania, you had mentioned something. I'd asked you, tell us something that we didn't know about you, which, by the way, I will ask again, and you'll have to have a different answer this time. But you grew up, you're the only boy. You have a bunch of sisters in your family. Is that right?
Yes, I have four older sisters.
So were there any rough and tumble football games with the sisters, or did they rough you up a little bit, or how'd that work out?
When I was little, most of the football games was just either just me by myself and improvising, or I asked my dad to come out and just throw balls to me and stuff. But yeah, they kind of did their own thing when I was growing up, and I did my own. But I'd say if there's any roughing up, or it happened when I was younger, but then once we started to get older and I started to catch up to them in height and everything, then any of the picking on me that happened kind of stopped, and we just, as we got older, we learned to just get along better, and we really became friends more than just like siblings picking on each other.
I do find that a little funny now that you've caught up in size. Now they're going to leave you alone. Now, your dad, he was coaching you too through, was it like high school or just tell us a little bit about your father and his football background too, how that kind of brought you along.
Yeah, so when I was even before I was born, my dad was he was coaching football at some level. He had coached high school, off and on my whole life, and then he was also a Little League football coach when I was a kid. So, every time he'd go to practices, no matter whether it was Little League or high school, I'd always, want to go with him and just be around it. And, he always, he's big in football. It was kind of, our whole family kind of revolved around the game. And he was obviously the one he introduced me to, and the love I have for football, started with him, and just he coached me. He coached me only coached me personally 1 year when I was in Little League, and then once I got to high school, once I started playing high school football, he stepped away from coaching, and just so he could just enjoy my career and like what I was be able to focus more on just me instead of his team on top of myself. So yeah, he's kind of always been there, always pushed football on me, always kind of, made sure I was doing everything I could to be the best player I could, and just offered me advice any way he could. You know, he's been through a lot of the same situations, the same levels I have. So he was always kind of my go-to if I ever had any questions about the game.
Yeah, your father was a pretty accomplished collegiate player, as well as played in the professional leagues as well. I believe it was the USFL. Is that correct?
Yeah, he played a couple years in the USFL.
Yeah, so it's got to be great to have like that firsthand experience. It's also really cool. You have to forgive me. I've done a few of these interviews and some things like overlap, but that was the thing I was trying to think was having your father as like a firsthand experience to draw from. And I do believe when I asked you before too, who you looked to growing up, it was your father was your first answer, but you had some other players. You had one that was a very interesting Steeler, if I do believe, and it'll kind of portray the type of player that you want to emulate.
What springs in my memory first is I think I said something about Hines Ward.
Yeah, that's the one.
If I recall. he was a different kind of player than you would see at his position around the league. He was just kind of always he played the game differently than others did, and he was always, for a while he was the face of the franchise when I was growing up. So he was always a player that I think not just me, but like Steeler fans everywhere. He was definitely probably the favorite player of many.
Yeah, I could definitely say I grew up being a big Hines Ward fan. I mean, who couldn't? I mean, the guy embodied that blue collar, hardworking, just the passion, the whole thing that embodies the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then he throws some vicious blocks too, which is, if I recall, that's one thing that you really enjoy doing is blocking, which will make you a great fit for the Steelers, who are, I assume, looking for exactly that in their tight ends. But just moving on from that and talking about your days going from Pitt through the Steelers and now where you are, I had to ask, and I know that I mentioned this once before, but is it a little strange now that maybe the scenery hasn't changed too much from the University of Pittsburgh to the Steelers, since you share, everything pretty much? You have a lot of the same practice facilities, and then games themselves will be played at Heinz Field. So for some of the guys that are coming in, and this is their first time, they haven't experienced any of this. Does it seem like almost like you're riding a bike? Is there still a different feel for it for you going from the Panthers to the Steelers?
Yeah, it's at first it was an adjustment because I'm going to the same building every day that I used to. It's just I'm going on the other side, so it was definitely a little bit of an adjustment at first. I got used to it for sure, but yeah, it's definitely it is different because I look over. Sometimes we'll be out of practice. I look over and see Pitt's team out there training, and it's strange to think that this time last year it was like the roles were reversed, and it was me training, looking out over at the Steelers practicing. So that's definitely something it took some getting used to. But after a while, it just became it was just what I did. So it eventually just kind of became second nature. I didn't really think about it too much. But it definitely at first there was an adjustment.
Yeah, it definitely has to take you back a little bit. Like, wow, you know what? I was there and now I'm here. And a year ago, like you were saying, I'm looking over the other side and wishing, hey, I want that in my future. And now you have it. Would you say maybe that having your former Pitt, well, I hate to say former, he's always going to be your Pitt teammate, James Conner, along for the ride with you, is that kind of going through the same process? Does it help to have somebody who went through the same thing to kind of share that experience with, or does it not really matter much?
No, I think it's definitely beneficial for the players because, yeah, like you're all going through the same thing together, and you're going through the same grind together, and it's nice to just have someone that you know and trust, and you can talk things with, you can confide with throughout the whole process. So yeah, it's definitely beneficial, I think, for players to have someone comfortable that they know and they've been around to just kind of look to each other and just helping each other through the whole process.
That just it seems really cool, and I know there's a few other situations and things like that other players have those type of bonds, and they kind of draw upon the same experiences. But I wanted to get just a little bit of your impression now with that change of scenery. Now, you go to the Steelers rookie minicamp, that all goes through. And, we spoke with, I mentioned to you before, we spoke with your fellow tight end and another rookie, Faison Odom, who actually came in invited to that camp and then was signed afterward. You go to OTAs and minicamp after that and things kind of change. Do you want to maybe tell us listeners maybe the difference between going to that first initial rookie minicamp and then stepping up to the OTAs and the regular minicamp?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, with rookie minicamp, other than, having to learn a new playbook and everything and get comfortable with all the mental side of things, it's really the level of competition that we were going against in practices was no different than what we had at the college level, because everyone's fresh out of college. We're all in the same boat, and other than some of the, the guys who were on, like maybe the practice squad the year before, we were all kind of we're all at the same level in the process. And then you go from rookie minicamp to OTAs, and you're around guys who, have been in the league for years. Some guys have been in there for a dozen years, and you just kind of see that's when you really kind of notice the difference it is from professional ball to in college football, because you see, you have guys out there, the speed's totally different. There's guys who have been a part of the offense and they've known the playbook for 5 to 10 years, and you just kind of realize how much farther you kind of have to go, and how much more you need to grow as a player to be competitive at that level. Because going from college to professional, it is. I honestly believe that it's a bigger jump overall than it is for high school to college.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe that's because, there is a 90-man roster right now, but there's such a large turnover from year to year, and you're simply working with the best of the best, many of which who have had that job for a very long time. And just making that transition now from being a collegiate athlete to now working in the pros. I know that some of this I was talking about if it's surreal at all, but is there any one of those veteran players, any member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, where you're on the field, you're doing these off-season workouts, and you just think to yourself, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe I'm on the field with this person. Is there anyone that really stands out in that regard?
I would say, just for me personally, just because, they've been with the team for so long, they've been playing at a high level for so long. Obviously, Ben Roethlisberger has been the quarterback there. He's been in there since I was probably in third or fourth grade. He's been the starting quarterback. So I think he's definitely one, just for the simple fact that, I watched him playing for his entire career. Now it's later in his career, and he's still playing at a high level. Yeah, that's one person that it kind of, you kind of take a step back and think about. And also, for the same reasons, James Harrison, he's been playing there for so long, playing at a high level the way he has. That's also another player that you just kind of, when you are on the field, you just kind of look over and be like, wow, I've actually been, I'm on the same level with him. And at first it's pretty surreal, but then once you kind of just, you have your moment, you shake it off, and then you're like, all right, well, now I have a job to do just like they do. So then you kind of, you learn to get over it pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's just you kind of exactly like the shock factor wears off. Hey, I've been watching these guys since I was a kid. You ever say that maybe to James at all, or no, or Big Ben? You ever say, "Hey, I watched you when I was a kid. I had your jersey," or something of that nature?
No, we've definitely. The rookies have definitely. We've discussed a certain thing like that. Like you want to say it, but it's like if you say that to them, it might be like, oh, wow, this person. If you say that, like, yeah, I watched you when I was when I was 10, that might not make the person feel so good. So we definitely just kind of keep ourselves, let that kind of be a joke among ourselves.
Yeah, I could see that. They're going to have your locker moved further down the locker room. Your stall is going to be further away from them as possible. So, but in all seriousness, some of these guys, they've been playing for many years. They have some very valuable knowledge of which they could pass on. Is there anyone specifically that has maybe taken you under their wing as a leadership role or mentored you personally?
I mean, from my personal experience, I think everyone in the tight end room has, been great with me, and Faison as well. I mean, even though it is obviously a competition for the same spots on the roster, they've done everything they can. Anytime we ask a question, they've been there to answer it. I mean, I sit next to David Johnson in meetings, and he's been in the league for almost 10 years now. So anytime I have a question, I know he's been in this offense for a long time, and if I have a question about honestly anything, he's always been there. If I ask him anything, he's been able to answer it for me and help me out. Sometimes just even give advice, even when we don't ask him. Like if we don't initiate it, he'll still just help us out any way he can. Yeah, definitely. Everyone in the tight end room has been more than helpful to us going through the whole process.
Yeah, the tight end room really sounds like a team effort from having heard that from yourself. And by the way, Faison said the same thing about Big Ben, and we told him to just kind of latch on. That could be your meal ticket. So just a hint there, nudge, nudge. But here's another guy that's probably a very influential, as I'll say, on your professional career, and that would be the Steelers tight end coach, James Daniel. We've spoken with Faison about him. We heard some words from former tight end with the Steelers, Wesley Saunders, about a week ago as well. What's your impression of Coach Daniel?
I think he's just, to me, he's just kind of, an old school professional coach. I mean, he'll give you all the tools you need to, be the best player you can, and he'll coach you hard. And if you do something good, he'll tell you, and if you do something bad, he'll tell you even quicker. He's just kind of the he's just kind of what you expect out of an old school coach. He's no nonsense. He tells you how it is all the time. He's a straight shooter. If there's something you need to work on, he'll tell you need to work on it. And if not, then you might not be around much longer. So he's definitely I think he's really what I expected out of a coach in the NFL. Because I mean, it's a totally different dynamic than it was in college. He mentioned to us before. He said this isn't college anymore, where you have your scholarship and it'll be there next year, because it's totally different than what all the guys coming from college are used to, where you have to fight for your job every single day. And he emphasizes that to us a lot, and definitely doesn't let us get too comfortable with where we're at, and makes it known that you have to work 100% all the time if you want to have a job in the league. So he's definitely been helpful in the fact that just kind of helping transition over from just the business of college over to the business of the NFL.
Yeah, that's a word that's often used to describe Coach James Daniel, and that is old school. He's certainly been around for a long time, and as mentioned when we had Faison on, he's been around since the Bill Cowher days and stayed on with Mike Tomlin's staff. Sounds like a great guy that you could definitely absorb a lot of knowledge from. But speaking of advice, and this could be from any level, including from Pitt High School, with your father having been a former coach and player himself, what's the best advice that anyone's ever given you in regard to just making it in the game of football?
I mean, I've had a bunch of different types of people get advising me throughout my career, but I just think out of everything, you kind of hear from a little bit from everyone. Like if you just have to. You can't just take anything for granted. You have to understand like how hard it is to maintain a job, especially now professionally. How hard it is to earn a spot and to maintain your job, whether even in college, like just to be a starter. That every day is my dad always told me that every single day everything you do is a tryout, and he said that in college, and now it's even more emphasized now that at the professional level, because it is everything you do. It's putting it on what you put on tape is your resume. So you just have to understand everything you do, even off the field now, everything you do, every decision you make on and off the field, that's a part of your resume, and that's going to carry over with you for the rest of your playing career. So make sure whatever you do, you know you're doing the right thing, and you're working hard to make sure you put yourself in a good position to always do the right thing.
That is very sound advice, particularly a lot of the off-field stuff. I'm sure you've had more than your fair share of interviews, questions about your personality and character, even the workouts with the combine and whatnot. That's all things that technically kind of happen off the field. They just want to make sure you have a clean background, because these 32 NFL teams are investing a lot of time and money into every prospect that's coming through their doors. So between the mini camps that are now over and training camp, is there anything that you're particularly doing with your downtime to improve your skills on the football field?
I think right now the emphasis, especially, knowing the fact that this will be my first training camp, I think the biggest thing is to make sure I, conditioning wise, and, I make sure I'm staying, in good enough shape to, once training camp hits, because I know it's going to be a totally different animal than what I was used to in college. So I think definitely just trying to make sure I'm physically ready for when training camp comes, and I think I'm doing that now. And especially in the weeks leading up, I'm going to be training at the Steelers facility still, and hopefully there's maybe some quarterbacks there and other guys there to just go through things, just maybe like run routes, work on catching, just any little thing that I can do to help me be more prepared, for the real stuff when it starts in August. And, I think just that, and just making really just – Coach always emphasizes don't show up less than ready. Don't show up if you're not ready to go and ready to get after it. So I think that's really the main emphasis I put on, these next few weeks of my preparation for training camp.
Yeah, I'd say in my own walk of life, I had one piece of advice that was given to me by someone I looked up to as a mentor as well, was to be over, and he swore, but he said, over effing prepared. You can never be under prepared. So it definitely sounds like you're headed in that direction. Usually when I have a guest of your caliber on the show, especially being new to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're usually new to the city of Pittsburgh, but this isn't the case for you. You've grown up in the shadow of the city for a very long time. You've been around not only through your youth, but through college. So maybe it's the other way around. Do you find yourself being like a tour guide and helping some of these other rookies, maybe first or second year players, guys that are new with the team, find their way around the city? Yeah,
I mean, I've had guys, like me, James, and other like Tarish and Matt. They're all the pick guys that are still here. We've definitely had guys come up and ask us about, even on weekends, like when we were in started OTAs, like what is there to do on the weekends? What's a good places to go eat, and then ask us about like what places should we avoid, what places are good for us to go to. So we've definitely been able to, kind of help some of the guys who are new to the city just find their way around. And, if they have family coming in to visit, giving them stuff that they can do with their family that's enjoyable. So, yeah, anytime there's someone that has a question about what we could do, like just kind of helping them get used to their surroundings and get familiar with the city, we've definitely been able to help them out in that regard.
So if you don't mind me asking, what is like the top thing that you give somebody new to Pittsburgh to do? What is it? What is the must-see or must-do activity in the city?
I mean, for a lot of people, I always just kind of tell them that if you want to get a good view of this, like if you want to get a good view of the city, kind of always a good go-to is always to go to Mount Washington. That's always fun. Duquesne Incline. If you want something good to eat, you can go down. There's a bunch of places in Station Square and the Strip District to go. So I just kind of, try to get them to, whether they have family in or just for their own sake, just try to, point them in the right direction whenever they ask me about something around the city.
That's there's nothing better than being on top of Mount Washington. It's just the first thing that popped in my head was just taking the little one to the zoo over the weekend. So I have a 3.5-year-old daughter. So
yeah.
I don't know that guys are going to the zoo, but definitely she loves the bridges and everything there with the three rivers. So just kind of going with that too. Those are all the plans right now, but what plans do you have for life after football, no matter how short or long your career may end up in the NFL?
I mean, there's definitely, I know I have a lot of options coming out, whenever my career's over, whether it's, in a few months, if it's 10 years down the road. I have my degree from college in criminal justice, so there's a lot, obviously, that you can do from that. And I've also, thought about possibly going back to school, because my fiance she was an education major, and she's working on her master's now, and talked with her about it, and maybe possibly going back to school after football's over to, be able to get certified as a teacher. That's another possibility I've thought about. But yeah, there's definitely a lot. I know whenever the time comes that I'll have to think about, what I want to make my career in. But I know for sure that I have a few options that I'm definitely going to, consider when that time comes.
My usual co-host that couldn't join us today, Brian Roach, has a question that he's been asking everyone as they join the team, and it's he wanted to know if you had a particular nickname that anyone has given you yet, or one that's maybe carried over from maybe your college days. I honestly haven't had a nickname in a while. Most of the people just kind of call me by my first name. I had nicknames when I was younger, but so far with the team, there hasn't been any. At least that I know, there hasn't been any nicknames spring up yet. Okay, well, we're going to have to get that fixed. You know that. I think if you bump into Cam Hayward enough times, it's coming. It's coming, certainly. So.
Oh yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Well, we didn't find out from the nickname if there was something we didn't know about you, so I'm gonna have you answer this again, because the first time it was growing up in a house with a whole bunch of sisters. What else would we have to really know Scott Orndoff in order to find out what your favorite hobby is, or something like that? Is there something that's just unique that nobody would otherwise maybe characterize you as doing?
That's interesting. I mean, we're going by like stuff away from football, one thing I definitely do enjoy reading a lot. I like reading about history. It's something I hated. You couldn't pay me to read a book when I was a kid, and I think since I've gotten into college, kind of realized what kind of stuff interests me. I definitely, it got to the point where for example, I like reading up and learning about World War II history. And when I realized I had seen all the good World War II movies that are out there, I wanted to, learn more. The only way I could do it was by reading. And, that's about halfway through college. I started reading a couple books I heard of, and I really enjoyed them. So now it's kind of, whenever I have time, whenever I have free time, that's something I always, try to make sure I'm doing.
Is that something that if you get into, you were saying getting back into maybe education or something like that, you want to be a history teacher, maybe focus on World War II if you were a professor or something of that like?
Become a teacher, definitely history, because even as a kid, I'd always been into history. I definitely would make sure that the World War II unit of my class there'd be a lot more emphasis on that one than maybe some other parts of history.
Yeah, it's still a large part of most history books, but as we know, those books tend to get thicker than they do shorter. So I wanted to call you Mr. Orndoff, but you might say that's your father. So, Scott, it was definitely an honor and a privilege to have you here, and I definitely love your chances with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and most certainly look forward to seeing you work out at training camp and in some of these upcoming preseason games.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think since I last spoke with you, you also have the little blue badge on Twitter that shows you're now a verified user, and we were joking about that before. You want to tell our listeners how they might be able to follow everything that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, the Twitter, I have a Twitter, and not really it's not the one I use the most, but I think if you want to see what I'm doing, I would say the best would be either Facebook or probably most prominently Instagram if you want to see what I'm doing. Because Twitter I have, but I don't really tweet that much. Most of it's just my Instagram posts anyway. So I think for me, it'd definitely be Instagram would be the best way to, keep tabs on me.
Yeah, I'm going to have to stop asking guys about Twitter because I almost feel like now I'm an old man using Twitter and everybody's using Instagram or Snapchat. I think Faison said the same exact thing. So we'll definitely check you out on Instagram. You have the blue badge on that yet by any chance?
I don't believe that I do, no.
Yeah, you're going to have to petition him for that. I don't think you want a bunch of people loading up to be your Facebook friends, though. That might just get to be a little too invasive, so we'll just leave it as it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is Pittsburgh Steelers rookie tight end, Scott Orndoff. Scott, thank you once again for taking time out of your day to join us on the Steel City Underground podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Okay, folks, so if you have any further questions here for maybe even some future guests here for the Steel City Underground podcast, don't forget our fan line. You could email us at fanmail@steelcityunderground.com, or you could even message us or call the phone number at 203-900-4SCU. Until next time, be safe, be good, and I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.